At a family reunion, my 7-year-old adopted daughter was told not to join the family picture because she's not real family. She cried silently all night, even with her father beside her. When I found out, I didn't shout. I did this. 3 hours later, the whole family lost it. I wasn't there when it happened. That, in itself, was the first mistake. My husband, Michael, had insisted he could manage one night without me, and I'd told myself the same comforting lie I always told when I tried to let go of control. What could possibly go wrong? Turns out, a lot. The reunion had been planned months ago, a 4-day extravaganza of family bonding, conveniently scheduled to begin on the one day I couldn't get off work. I told my parents this, thinking they'd adjust. But no, the date was set. Tradition, they said. Funny how tradition always seems to fall in my sister Rachel's favor. So Michael went ahead with our daughter, Anya. He hadn't been thrilled about it, but he agreed. He'd grown up in a polite, conflict-averse household where you never challenged the elders. You just smiled, nodded, and hoped the storm passed. I should have known that would be a problem. When I pulled into the venue parking lot the next morning, suitcase bumping against my leg, I felt expectant. I'd missed the opening night, but maybe today would feel like family. The instant I saw Michael and Anya standing near the lobby, though, my stomach dropped. Michael looked like he hadn't slept. Anya clung to his hand, head down, her usual sparkle gone. "Everything okay?" I asked, forcing brightness into my voice. "Yeah, fine," Michael said, too quickly, too flat. That was the moment I knew. Something had happened. It didn't take long to corner him. I pulled him aside while Anya sat near the window, distracted by her stuffed rabbit. "Tell me," I said. He hesitated, rubbed the back of his neck. "Julia, I didn't know what to do." "Do about what?" My voice dropped an octave, cold. "There was a picture." Last night he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Everyone was gathering for the family photo." Anya ran forward, smiling. "And then your mom—" He trailed off. "My mom what?" Michael swallowed. "She told Anya, in that sweet voice of hers, that the picture was just for family. That she should stand to the side." I froze. The words didn't even process at first. Then they did. Burning hot, searing through me. Michael rushed on. "Your dad was right there." Rachel, too, with her kids Jacob and Grace. Nobody said anything. Rachel's kids even sat in the spot Anya was reaching for. And Anya, she just folded in on herself. Tried not to cry. I stared at him, disbelief curdling into fury. "And you said nothing?" His face flushed. "Julia, they're your parents. I didn't want to start a fight. I didn't think—" "You didn't think?" My voice was a razor. "She's 7. She's our daughter. You let them humiliate her." I was shocked. Everyone seemed to agree. What was I supposed to do? Take on your entire family by myself? "Yes," I hissed. "That's exactly what you were supposed to do." A silence stretched between us, sharp as glass. He looked down. I looked past him, at Anya, sitting small, her stuffed rabbit pulled tight to her chest. That was the moment my heartbreak hardened into something colder. Later at breakfast, I decided to test the waters myself. I approached the table where Mom, Dad, and Rachel sat, laughing over coffee like nothing had happened. "Is it true?" I asked quietly, "that you told Anya she couldn't be in the photo?" Mom turned, her smile sugared and false. "Well, yes. We just thought the picture should be for family. She is my daughter." Rachel shrugged, as if I'd commented on the weather. Dad sipped his coffee, silent, his gaze fixed on the tablecloth. Their faces didn't waver. They didn't see the problem. The room tilted for a moment, fury threatening to swallow me whole. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to throw every plate and glass to the ground until they shattered like the image of family I'd clung to all these years. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. A thin, sharp smile. The kind that said, "Noted." Then I walked away. Anya clung to my waist when I rejoined her and Michael. I smoothed her hair back, kissed her head, forced calm into my voice. "Why don't you and Daddy go get ready for the day?" I told her. "I'll meet you soon." When they were gone, I sat down, pulled out my phone and began typing. Not texts. Not to them. Calls, emails, cancellations. The kind of quiet, deliberate moves you only make once. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just started making a few calls. And from that moment, nothing about this reunion, or their lives, would ever be the same. They just didn't know it yet. I didn't always know what it meant to be the unfavorite. As a kid, I thought it was normal that Rachel got the bigger slice of cake, the shinier toys, the louder applause. She was the golden child, and I was what's the opposite of golden? Nickel? Rusted tin? Whatever it was, that was me. The older we got, the clearer it became. Rachel could have spilled red wine on the white carpet, and Mom would have called it charming. I could have cured cancer, and Dad would have asked why I didn't do it faster. And then Rachel had children, Jacob and Grace, 2 golden grandchildren gleaming like trophies. Meanwhile, I couldn't conceive. Years of trying, tests, heartbreak, silence. I don't think I've ever hated silence as much as I hated that one. And my family's reaction? Not pity, not sympathy, just convenience. "Well, at least you don't have kids," Mom chirped once. "You've got more time to help us." The others laughed like it was a joke. I laughed too. But inside, I wanted to rip my skin off. So I became the helper, the babysitter, the financial backer, the human safety net. "Oh, Julia, you're so lucky you don't have children." "Could you watch Jacob and Grace while Rachel rests?" "Oh, Julia, you're doing so well in your career." "Could you help with the mortgage a little?" "Oh, Julia, you've got such a flexible schedule." "Could you drive Mom to her appointment?" Lucky, flexible, helpful. That was my title. Never mind that I was crying in bathrooms between meetings. Never mind that I was bleeding money into their bottomless pit. Never mind that all I wanted was to hold a child of my own. But of course, Rachel's children needed gymnastics lessons. Guess who paid? When I finally decided to adopt, I thought they'd at least clap politely. Adoption isn't a whim. It's a decision that comes with mountains of paperwork and oceans of hope. Instead, I got a lecture. "She won't be your real daughter," Dad said flatly. "It's just different," Mom added with that syrupy tone that always meant condescension disguised as concern. I corrected them calmly. "She will be my daughter." But inside, I wondered if it wasn't really about blood. Maybe it was about control. Maybe they didn't want me to have a child at all. Because as long as I was childless, I was free. Free to pay. Free to help. Free to sacrifice. And free to be used. Then came Anya, 6 years old when she walked into our lives, now 7, bright, stubborn, already carrying the scars of being unwanted, yet still desperate to belong. The first time she called me Mom, I nearly collapsed from the weight of it. Michael and I built our world around her. Every bedtime story, every school pickup, every scraped knee kissed. But my parents? My sister? Rachel's golden children? They never let her in. At best, they were polite. At worst, they treated her like a guest overstaying her welcome. "Of course we love her," Mom said once, patting Anya's head as if she were a puppy. "She's just different." Different. Always that word. And still, I kept helping. Old habits die hard. mortgage top-ups, babysitting Jacob and Grace, funding family activities. This reunion? Paid for by me. The venue, the catering, the shiny little extras that made everyone clap their hands and declare, "Oh, what a lovely idea!" Yes, what a lovely idea indeed, funded by the useless daughter. But after what happened to Anya last night, the sugary exclusion, the silence, the way Rachel's children slid into the seat meant for mine, I was finished. So there I was, sitting alone in our room while Michael took Anya out for a walk, my phone in my hand, my heart pounding like a war drum, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel powerless. I scrolled through the list of bookings on my card, the venue, the entertainment, the catering, each one neatly labeled, waiting for me. One by one, I began to cancel. Click, click, click. With every cancellation, a new silence filled the room. Not the suffocating silence of neglect, but the heavy, certain silence of justice sharpening its blade. And then I thought, why stop there? The mortgage top-ups, the automatic transfers to Jacob's extracurriculars, the payments I'd been making without a second thought because that's what good daughters did. All of it. Gone. I stared at the confirmation screen, my finger hovering above the button. I almost laughed. God, if Rachel knew she'd have to pay for her own children's hobbies, she'd faint right there in her designer boots. I pressed it. Another click. Another silence. For a moment, guilt threatened to creep in. That old, familiar guilt that had kept me leashed for years. They'll be disappointed. They'll be angry. They'll say you're selfish. And then I remembered Anya's voice, small and trembling. They told me I'm not real family. The guilt evaporated. They don't see me as family, I whispered. Then they don't deserve me as family either. My hand was steady. My voice was calm. But inside, something seismic shifted. A fault line giving way. This wasn't just rebellion. This was severance. I set the phone down, a small smile tugging at my lips. 3 hours from now, when the family marched up to the locked doors of the venue I'd canceled, they would begin to understand. But that was only the beginning. Because the lifeline they'd treated as their entitlement, it was gone. And soon the phones would ring. The accusations would fly. The panic would set in. They didn't know it yet. But by the time they realized, it would be too late. 3 hours later, the phone started ringing. I was sitting with a cup of coffee while Anya sketched little flowers on the corner of a placemat when my mother's name lit up on the screen. Then Dad. Then Rachel. I didn't answer. By then, I knew exactly what was happening. They would have gathered at the venue, dressed for the big family outing. They would have marched up, tickets in hand, only to be turned away at the door. Sorry, the booking was canceled by the cardholder. I didn't need to picture it. I'd lived long enough with them to know how they'd react. Mom indignant, Rachel defensive, Dad silent. And Anya's name wouldn't have been mentioned once. I put the phone face down on the table. Anya looked up at me, wide-eyed. "Grandma?" she asked. "Yes." "Are they mad?" "They're upset," I said carefully. "But it's not your fault." She studied me, searching my face for the cracks I wasn't letting show. Finally, she leaned her head against my arm. That was all I needed to know. I'd done the right thing. The next day, the calls became louder, angrier. "You ruined everything! We're humiliated! This is unforgivable!" By afternoon, the tone had shifted. Guilt. Pleading. "We're your parents. You don't turn your back on family. Think of Rachel's children. They don't deserve this. You'll regret this when we're gone." I let most of it go unanswered, but Anya saw me press decline again and again. She saw me choose her over and over, and I could see something in her shoulders ease a little each time. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was relief. When we finally returned home after the reunion, the deeper cuts revealed themselves. The mortgage support I'd been providing stopped. The monthly payments for Jacob's lessons ended. The quiet financial safety net I'd been holding under all of them gone. That was when the panic set in. Julia, you can't just do this. We depend on you. Julia, your sister can't manage without your help. You're tearing this family apart. Number. They had done that the moment they told my daughter she wasn't real family. One evening, I finally picked up. Rachel's voice came through, strained and broken. You can't mean this. We're your family. You can't just walk away. I took a breath, steady and even. You told my daughter she isn't family. That means I'm not family either. There was a silence on the other end, the kind that tells you someone has finally heard the truth, even if they'll never admit it. I can't believe you'd do this, she whispered. I can, I said, and ended the call. At night, as the phone buzzed with more messages and missed calls, I tucked Anya in beside me. Her small face was still uncertain, still carrying the weight of those words she'd heard. Mom? She whispered. Are you mad at me? Because they said... I stopped her right there. No, sweetheart. I am not mad at you. I am mad at them, and I'm not going to let them hurt you again. Her eyes filled, but she nodded. She believed me. And for the first time since this reunion began, she fell asleep quickly. I lay awake a long time after, staring at the ceiling. The phone buzzed again and again on the nightstand, but I didn't reach for it. Let them call. They didn't know it yet, but their family, the family that had excluded my daughter, no longer existed. They showed up with a cake, chocolate, with frosting already sagging in the heat, the kind Rachel would never bake herself, which meant it came from the overpriced bakery down the street, a peace offering with a price tag. Julia, Mom began, her smile stretched too wide. We just wanted to talk. Behind her, Dad looked stiff and uncomfortable, and Rachel, perfect Rachel, held the cake like she was presenting a prize at a raffle. Funny, I said, leaning against the doorframe. You brought dessert. Did you think sugar cancels cruelty? Rachel flushed. That's not fair. We came here in good faith. I raised an eyebrow. Did you? Anya appeared in the hallway, rabbit in hand. Her little face was pale, wary. She didn't say a word, just pressed herself against my side. Mom bent down, pitching her voice sugary sweet. Oh, Anya, darling, we're so sorry. Of course you're family. Just not blood, but still family. Anya's hand tightened in mine. I crouched, brushing her hair back. Why don't you go play in the living room, sweetheart? I'll be there soon. She hesitated, then obeyed, rabbit dragging along the floor. I stood and looked back at the trio on my doorstep. You should have stopped talking while you were ahead. Dad sighed. Julia, don't be like this. We came to make peace. Peace, I repeated flatly. Is that what you call this? We just want things to go back to the way they were, Rachel said quickly, almost desperately. Before all this... tension. Before Anya, you mean. Her mouth snapped shut, but the silence spoke louder than any denial, and then it slipped. Mom's voice sharpened as if she couldn't help herself. Everything was fine before. You had a place. You helped us. You helped Rachel with her children. We all relied on you. Why wasn't that enough? There it was. The truth they'd hidden behind tradition and obligation, tumbling out by accident. I let the silence stretch. Enough? I said finally. My voice was low, sharp. You think my life was enough because I served you? Because I babysat Rachel's children, paid your bills, and pretended that filled the hole in my chest? Rachel looked down, cheeks burning. Mom pressed her lips together, realizing too late what she'd admitted. But they didn't stop. They never did. Dad muttered, "We accepted your life as it was." You couldn't have children. That was how it was meant to be. But then you went and forced it. You changed everything. I stared at him, the words ringing in my ears. Forced it. He went on, oblivious. You brought in someone from outside, and now nothing is the same. Julia, you have to admit, things were smoother before. Smoother. Useful. Predictable. They didn't have to say the word mistake. It was in every pause, every glance at the sweating cake on my porch rail. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully clear. You never saw me as my own person, I said. My voice shook at first, then steadied. You twisted nature, twisted tradition, whatever suited you, just to keep me in my place. You never cared about my happiness, only about my usefulness. And when I stopped being useful, when I dared to claim a life of my own, you couldn't stand it. Rachel flinched. That's not true. Yes, it is, I shot back. You wanted me childless because it kept me available. And now you can't stand that I have a daughter, not because she's adopted, not because she's not blood, but because she's mine. And that means I don't belong to you anymore. Mom bristled, voice cracking. You're choosing her over us? Yes, I said, without hesitation. Every time. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but not for me, for herself. You can't mean this. You'll regret it. I stepped back and put my hand on the door. Leave. Now Dad's jaw tightened. Julia, or I call security. For a moment I thought they'd push past me, but then Rachel set the cake on the porch railing with shaking hands. They turned and walked away, their figures shrinking with each step. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Anya was waiting in the hallway, clutching her rabbit so tightly her knuckles were white. Mom, she whispered, am I the reason you lost your family? The words pierced me deeper than anything my parents had said. I knelt, taking her face in my hands. No, sweetheart. You're the reason I finally found one. Her eyes shimmered. Really? Really. I kissed her forehead. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me everything. She buried her face against me, trembling. I held her, one hand stroking her hair, until the tension in her small shoulders began to ease. Behind us, Michael stood silently, eyes damp. For once, he didn't try to make peace. He just nodded, as if to say, I understand now. A year later, everything looked different. Not dramatic, not flashy, just lighter. My house felt bigger without the weight of obligation pressing against its walls. My calendar was my own. My money went toward things that mattered. Trips with Anya, weekend ice cream runs, a spontaneous day at the zoo where she laughed so hard she nearly fell over. She no longer asked, Am I really your family? That question vanished like smoke once she understood the truth. She was mine. Entirely, unquestionably mine. And the rest of them? I didn't hear from my parents directly anymore. I'd blocked their numbers. But word travels. A cousin mentioned seeing Mom at the grocery store, working part-time stocking shelves. Dad had taken up a shift at the hardware store. Retirement didn't last without the extra money I'd been funneling in. Rachel's perfect facade cracked too. Jacob had to quit his expensive lessons, the ones I'd quietly funded. Grace, spoiled as cream, had to trade private activities for the local community center. I heard Rachel complaining once, her voice rising through the grapevine. Julia abandoned us. She ruined everything, number. I hadn't ruined anything. I'd simply stopped propping it up. It used to haunt me. The why. Why I was never enough. Why every success disappeared in Rachel's shadow. Why my parents' love felt like a ration I was never entitled to. Now I knew. I was never meant to be enough. I was meant to be useful. To orbit Rachel like she was the sun. To shine only by reflection. That was my assigned role. Until Anya. She broke their system just by existing. She gave me a world of my own. A life where I was the center of someone's orbit, and she was the center of mine. That's why they hated her. That's why they wanted her erased. And that's why I'll never let them near her again. Last weekend, Anya and I sat in the park, snapping selfies on her little tablet. Her grin was missing a tooth, her hair messy, her eyes shining like she'd swallowed the sun. I saved the picture, printed it, stuck it on our fridge. This is our picture now, and nobody gets cropped out. Do you think I went too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.